Interestingly, David Icke's story starts with a woman named Alice Bailey. Some of the following information on Alice Bailey is taken from the excellent research of Terry Melanson, the founder and webmaster for conspiracyarchive.com. He writes, Alice Ann Bailey was a leading disciple of the Russian theosophist Madame Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy. Bailey formed the Lucifer Publishing Company in 1920, and in 1922 she saw the organization's name changed to Lucis Trust, though the advancement of the Luciferian beliefs remained true. Lucis Trust promulgates the work of a, quote, ascended master, a spiritual being who was working through or in Alice Bailey for some 30 years. The Lucis Trust Publishing Company and their many fronts carry out the work of a Luciferian, quote, master plan for the establishment of something they call the Age of Aquarius. Lucis Trust is a powerful institution that enjoys consultative status with the United Nations, which permits it to have a close working relationship with the UN, including a seat on the weekly sessions, but most importantly, influence with powerful business and national leaders throughout the world. Through its founding of world goodwill, Lucis Trust is, quote, aggressively involved in promoting a globalist ideology. Bailey's influential occult organization is tied to an international conspiracy of elitists like the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergs, and the Trilateral Commission. A spirit that called itself Dejoie Cool wrote many books through her. These included a plan that detailed many aspects of a world government that she called the New World Order. Quotes like, in a preparatory period for the New World Order, there will be a steady and regulated disarmament. It will not be optional. No nation will be permitted to produce and organize any equipment for destructive purposes or to infringe the security of any other nation. She actually outlines the process of how to prepare humanity for the New World Order in a section of her book, Externalization of the Hierarchy, called Steps Towards the New World Order. In another section called The Problem of Government, she appears to lay out the plan that would later become the basis for the Trilateral Commission by outlining how to divide the world into 3 blocks. But first she states this, coming now to the realm of government under the New World Order, one is faced with a very complex situation. Various basic trends of thought are appearing which, in the New World Order, will unfold in that major synthesis so much desired by the spiritual hierarchy of the planet. In addition to being one of the founders of the ideals and philosophies of those planning global governance, her writings also gained immense fame with another people group, that is of the so-called New Age. Her extensive writings served as the foundational beliefs of the New Age movement to this day. David Icke in recent times seems to agree with this. He said in his book The Biggest Secret, quote, 2 organizations spawned by Alice Bailey's work, the Lucis Trust and the World Goodwill Organization, are both staunch promoters of the United Nations. He also says, Alice Bailey founded the Arcane Esoteric School. She claimed to channel an entity she called the Tibetan, and she produced a number of books including Hierarchy of Masters, The 7 Rays, A New Group of World Servers, and New World Religion. Bailey said that her Tibetan master had told her the Second World War was necessary to defend the plan of God. That sounds ridiculous to me, but there are many in the New Age field who believe that everything is a part of the plan and the will of God, even a global Holocaust. It's impossible to understand why David Icke teaches the things that he teaches these days without first reading 2 of his now out-of-print books. His first book, Truth Vibrations, which he still mentions on his website, but says that they're out of stock, and his next book, Love Changes Everything, which he doesn't even have listed on his website at all. Before we get into the details of this very important material, you should know a little of the history of each book. Truth Vibrations was published in 1991, and Icke will refer to it from time to time. And although he admits his views have changed slightly, he still agrees with much that is in the book. Then there's his next book, Love Changes Everything. And unlike Truth Vibrations, Love Changes Everything was written after his Kundalini spiritual awakening in Peru, where Icke says that his mind was blown. And because of this, Icke says he doesn't like that book at all. He says, quote, I don't like that book because it was written at the most extreme time of my transformation, when I wasn't sure what planet I was on, never mind what my name was. The problem with trying to distance himself with these books is, as we will see, it's obvious that he still believes their main points. We will see countless examples of this in his recent talks and his recent books. And once you see the details of his early beliefs, it will become very clear that they are the same beliefs that are behind Alice Bailey and the New World Order. The first clue that there was a connection between Icke and Alice Bailey came only a few pages into Love Changes Everything, where Icke says, Since the publication of the Truth Vibrations, I have learned so much more as I have communicated almost daily with Rakorsky, the one known as Lord of all creation, who is directly responsible for the changes the earth will undergo. I also communicate often with the one we know as Jesus, the Spirit of the earth, and many others. Now, keep in mind that this Rakorsky is the same spirit that dictated much of his first book, The Truth Vibrations, back when the I first appeared. He says on page 21 of The Truth Vibrations, quote, "Soon after this, the I appeared. One evening I was lying on my bed in a hotel room when I closed my eyes, and there, forming out of the darkness, was the shape of an eye. It was there for a split second at first before dispersing, but gradually it became permanent." Listen to Icke in this early interview when he talks about these entities.
And one great example of the way this works I came across, which the beings, which we call the guys, told us about.
You call them the guys?
The guys, yeah. It's not.
But the beings like
Tarot, Rakorsky, and that's right.
Yeah.
Now
he was Jesus' father, Rakorsky.
That's right.
And Merlin as well.
Part of him was, that's right. The aspects.
Now, although there's a lot to talk about from that clip, the thing that I want to focus in on is the being's name, Rakorsky. In Theosophy, Rakorsky is one of the ascended masters. These are the beings that are supposedly so evolved that they have transcended the physical realm, and now they are helping humanity pass through a coming age of enlightenment. Rakorsky was a particular ascended master that Alice Bailey wrote extensively about. It is especially significant that Icke calls him the Lord of all creation, and elsewhere, as we will see, the Lord of civilization, and says that he is, quote, directly responsible for the changes the earth will undergo, because these are absolutely clear examples that he is referring to the same ascended master that Alice Bailey made prominent, as she gave him those exact titles and said that his task was to establish the new civilization of the age of Aquarius. She also connected him with the so-called seventh ray, which will become incredibly significant as the story unfolds. It was only later, while reading the Truth Vibrations, did I find that he actually confirmed my suspicion that he was in fact talking about Bailey's ascended masters. In a section where he was talking about the different messages he received, he said, "Some of the communications came directly from the consciousness which has the awesome responsibility for easing in and guiding the new age of Aquarius, the Lord of civilization and the Lord of the seventh ray, one of the energies we will soon be receiving at a much increased power." He continues, "The universe is governed and guided by a massive hierarchy, and the person or consciousnesses are selected purely by a soul's stage of evolution. There are beings that guide the cosmic, galactic, solar, and planetary systems, planets, countries, and regions. Each one of these systems is broken down into further levels of organization. At the head of our solar system is the solar logos, working with the lords of the rays who control the energies that affect consciousness and spiritual development of life forms. These have become known as the Ascended Masters, and they are supported by other Ascended Masters behind the scenes, as it were." One of the best ways to demonstrate that David still holds these theosophical views today is with David's view of the so-called solar logos. As we just read, David believed that there was a literal sun god called the solar logos, and that the solar logos was going to be the entity that would send the energy to raise our consciousnesses and to make us, well, godlike. In another place, Icke says that Rakorsky told him that, quote, "The solar logos is the spirit of the sun, who guides the solar system and sends certain energies to the planet and the stars." He also goes on to say that the solar logos can reach a, quote, "immensely high level of understanding, and that he or she can then evolve to be the Lord over several suns." When Icke said earlier, at the head of our solar system is the solar logos, working with the lords of the rays, who control the energies that affect consciousness and spiritual development of all life forms, he's talking about how in Theosophy, it is the solar logos that is going to send the rays that are supposed to raise the consciousness of the earth. Alice Bailey's idea was that these 7 rays would be generated from the galactic logos, whom she often referred to as the one about whom naught may be said. These special rays would then be filtered through the sun god and then come to the earth to change us and the spirit of the earth, or Gaia. David very much believed in the 7-ray theory of Alice Bailey. In fact, in both of his early books, he not only gives lists for each ray and their characteristics, but he gives the exact characteristics for each one that Alice Bailey wrote. I will show you Alice Bailey's 7-ray chart on the screen, and I will read from David's book, Truth Vibrations. David begins, "These rays are 1. Pure will and power. Ray 2. Love and wisdom. Ray 3. Intelligence. Ray 4. Harmony through conflict. Ray 5. Concrete mind and science. Ray 6. Love and devotion. Ray 7. Law and order and ceremonial magic. The Rikorsky ray." That last part is a dead giveaway because if you notice that Alice Bailey associated each ray to an ascended master, you'll notice that next to the last ray, the one Icke calls the Rikorsky ray, is named Saint Germain. And that is what Bailey, and even Icke, would sometimes call Rikorsky. Bailey would also refer to him as Master R. One way to demonstrate how devoted Icke was to this idea of the 7 rays is to point out that during this time, he would only wear the colors turquoise and light purple because certain colors were attributed to the different rays, and he believed it would attract more good vibrations to himself.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to ask David, is there anything special about that suit that he has on? He wore that on the table and showed us.
The colour turquoise, yes, you can answer that, David. Well, this light, which the Bible talks of, this energy, this life force that is sent out from the Godhead and all around creation, and it's this life force around the planet that's been disrupted, has sub-frequencies within it. And each of those have a vibration, a frequency of a colour. And turquoise is the colour of an energy within that light known as love and wisdom. And if you wear the colour that is on the same frequency, then you attract it and absorb it much more efficiently.
And in case you think that he outgrew that, he posted on his website 11 years later a story defending his wearing turquoise back then. He would later modify his beliefs slightly. He said recently, "Turquoise is an important color, but you don't have to wear it all the time." In more recent times, he confirms this belief in the rays that will cause an evolutionary shift. In his 8th book, "And the Truth Shall Set You Free," he says, "Cosmic rays of unprecedented power are being detected. These are the energies that are changing life on this planet. These cycles are fundamental, I believe, to the spiritual transformation and the multidimensional shifts which the planet and humanity are experiencing." Now let's get into why any of this matters to you, a truth seeker. Let me first quote Icke from his book Robots Rebellion. He says, "The sun is far more than a massive ball of fire generating warmth. It is another substation for source energies. The ancients knew this, or at least their most highly evolved members did, and this is one explanation for the origin of the sun god and sun worship. The more enlightened members of their number were not worshipping a ball of fire in the sky, they were acknowledging the solar logos, through which the knowledge and wisdom of the source reaches the planet." He continues, "Just as the sun is the mind that guides the solar system, the galactic mind guides the galaxy, and the universal mind guides the universe." Notice how he capitalizes these words like source and galactic mind. He's referring to the galactic logos from Alice Bailey, the one that she called the one about whom naught may be said. Notice how he talks about the worship of the sun in very good terms. That is, as long as you know what you're doing, and know the esoteric truth about the sun, that it's actually the solar logos. After all, he says, these secret societies were just acknowledging the solar logos, through which the knowledge and wisdom of the source reaches the planet. It's a very good thing, he says, to venerate the sun, as long as you know what you're doing. We see him doing this exact same thing today. The only difference is that he doesn't use the word solar logos anymore. And as you watch these clips, notice the words he uses to describe the true worship of the sun. If you know David Icke, you know that he's using the best words in his vocabulary to present it in a good way. Words like vibrational.
And one of the things that's come through history is the moon and sun religion. The religion using the symbolism of the sun and the moon, which has been manifested as the sun god and the sun goddess. Now this has many connotations. On some levels it's worship of the sun, but on deeper levels of knowledge, these are symbolic of deep esoteric and vibrational, mathematical, geometrical concepts. It depends what level you're meeting the knowledge at, what level you have access to.
Terry Melanson, founder of ConspiracyArchive.com, said the following about the Lucis Trust logo. Quote, "The Lucis Trust logo features this streaming blue light. The the New Age symbol invented by Foster Bailey, Alice Bailey's 32nd degree Freemason husband, has a plethora of symbolic imagery. The symbol, according to Lucius Trust, is, quote, set in a limitless field of blue, which signifies the sphere of life expression of our solar logos. Superimposed upon the triangle of New Age forces is the five-pointed star. In her book Rays and Initiations, Alice Bailey reveals that the solar logos is Lucifer himself. Now listen to Icke describe how the sun's rays are going to be the thing that causes the spiritual evolutions that he always says are coming. And listen carefully as he tries to work in the black hole in the center of the galaxy as being the source of this life-changing energy. And this is important because, as we will see, he has no scientific reason for saying that the black hole is going to send out any energy to the sun, but I think he does have a religious belief that Bailey's 7 rays will come from the galactic logos and are then sent to the solar logos to transform humanity and the Earth.
And my feeling about this awakening is that this is very, very much involved. I've got a lot more to do on this, to say the least, but I'm sure that the sun is far more than a source of heat. It is a place or an opening, a gateway, where great energetic change and code changes come into this solar system, same with others all around what we call the universe. And I feel that at the elite level, not among the general population, one of the focuses on the sun, or the reasons for the obsession with the sun, is the knowledge of this, right going back to the ancient world. I also feel that the black holes and stuff are also ways that these energetic codes come in and out of this reality. Is that what we're going through is, I talked there about this vibrational base construct, which is coming out of the black holes. That is now very powerfully in the process of changing its vibrational state. We're in this cusp between how it was, the suppressed, the limited. So as this energy changes, it's triggering different photon information from the suns, in this case our sun, and so people are starting to, those more open to it first, are starting to decode a different base information construct. And what that's doing is changing their perception as we decode it and move into a different era. This vibration coming from the black holes, this base vibration, now there'll be more to know, but I'm trying to put the themes here. As it moves through its cycle of change before coming back to the original vibration, it's changing the information coming out of the suns in the form of photons. It's changing the information construct. Therefore, we are starting to decode, as it moves through the cycle, different information. And I tell you the way I see it, anyway. What I'm saying in my new book is that the black holes, like the one in the center of this galaxy, are vibrating the base vibrational state of this reality. But it's not stable in the sense that it doesn't just stay forever vibrating in the same way. It goes through a cycle. And so it goes through this vibrational cycle and eventually comes back to the start. As the black holes vibrate this base vibrational construct, this base vibrational foundation, it triggers information from the suns to be transmitted in the form of photons, photon energy, which is information. As this vibration changes, and whoever created this virtual reality universe, in other words, this massively advanced computer game, they created this vibrational cycle. And as it goes through its cycle, the information coming from the suns in the photon energy changes. And so we're decoding these things, this change. So we go through periods of what the ancients called the Golden Age, when there's massive expansion of awareness and connection and harmony and all the rest of it. And then there are other periods where
the energy and the information is much more suppressed and limited, and these different cycles go on until it comes back from the start and the whole thing starts again.
Now, I looked into his new book to see if he explained what this cycle was that the black hole was going through, because in running the website, the 2012deception.net, I feel I've heard just about every theory in which a cycle concerning the black hole and the sun is mentioned. Yet I've never heard of a vibrational-based frequency that was part of a cycle or anything remotely similar, so naturally I was very curious to find out what scientific information he had to back up these claims, because it seemed like he was just trying to make the theosophy idea sound really scientific. So I thought it was really funny when first I found that he never addresses this cycle at all in his new book, but what he did do was pretty hilarious. He actually put a picture of Carl Sagan on page 406 of Human Race Get Off Your Knees, and instead of quoting Carl Sagan, he quotes a woman named Carol Clark who had a, quote, vivid dream where dead Carl Sagan spoke to her. This dream version of Carl Sagan is literally the only scientific support he has for this particular idea. It simply says on page 407, quote, black holes resonate the frequency, and the different frequencies trigger different levels of information awareness to be emitted by the sun in the form of photons. So this dream version of Carl Sagan is the only evidence that Icke offers us to believe in this incredibly important theosophical idea about the sun god sending rays from the galactic god to change humanity. Even Icke's latest and greatest theories have their origins in his early writings, which in turn have their origins in Alice Bailey's writings. Take, for example, the subject of the moon. Icke claims he got the message from the spirit world regarding the moon.
I sat down to start writing that day, and the energy in the room changed. I thought, I know this, I recognize this. The energy in the room changed. There was a vibrational change. You could feel it. The atmosphere changed, is a simple way of putting it. I recognize this. And what I then got as this was happening is the basic first theme was the moon is not real. Of course, there's more to know about that as came, but the moon is not real. The moon is not what you think it is.
He claims in his recent book that the moon is an artificial spacecraft, that the reptilians flew to our solar system, and once it came into orbit with the Earth, it caused major catastrophes. But what's worse is that it messed up the vibration so bad that it took us from godlike beings that could levitate and only had to eat energy instead of animals, down to people who are like we are today, controlled by greed and anger, etc. There are several things very interesting about Icke's brand new theory. One of them is that it's not new for him at all. He describes the exact same thing in his book Love Changes Everything, but with a slightly different flavor. He says, quote, Satan incarnated on the moon and helped to create fantastic negativity. The imbalance was such that the moon spirit left, and Lucifer, now rejoined in the light levels by Satan, used all the power of the negative energies and those created at the moment the spirit left to direct the dying, spiritless planet towards another planet. The light levels had known that Lucifer was planning on using the moon to create havoc, because his thought forms were passed directly to the Archangel Michael through the Devic information system and vice versa. Lucifer was thus aware of this and found a way to prevent the Godhead and Michael knowing exactly what he intended to do with the moon. He formed a very large number of plans in his mind, but did not decide which one he would go for until the last possible moment, when he sent out one surge of negative energy that directed the dying moon towards Earth. The Archangel Michael said, there were a great number of possibilities, and we were in a waiting situation. Icke says that this, luckily, was happening right at the time of a scheduled axis shift at the end of the Atlantis civilization, and as a result, the sun god was putting forward a lot of positive energy at the time. He says, quote, Sikorsky said of the aftermath that the power of the solar logos' positive energy ray was enough to stop the moon from colliding with the Earth, but it became trapped in the Earth's orbit. Icke continues, the Earth's energy was in tatters, and if it were not for the Archangel Michael somehow keeping open some energy arteries to the main network, the planet would not have survived. I owe him much, the Earth Spirit said, and his perseverance and positive attitude was wonderful for all of us. A spirit called Magnu, whom Icke still quotes at the end of his lectures, said the following on pages 61 and 62, quote, Land was torn in half, life was snuffed out in an instant, and it was the start of what has become known as the cataclysm. There was water everywhere, tidal waves everywhere, land froze within minutes, great mountains of rock were wrenched out of the earth, areas of land sunk, just collapsed and disappeared. There were violent eruptions, devastating land shifts, and the sea came in. Doesn't this help you better understand what Icke is saying in this interview?
For me, this period that people call Atlantis and Lemuria and talk of great cataclysms and stuff like that, that was probably the time when the hacking happened. There was a vibrational shift in a direction of limitation. My feeling is that, first of all, we had a much greater expansion of awareness, visual awareness, hearing awareness, all the senses went much further out vibrationally, and therefore we could access far more. When this shift of limitation took place because of these cataclysmic events, you can clearly see in the biological and geological record that this happened, and of course you can see it in all the great flood and cataclysmic stories in all the native cultures around the world. When this happened, there was an energy deficit, and I feel that energy deficit is bridged by what we call food. You've got lions and all these different animals all over the world, right down to the insects level of life, that basically every day is a killing field just to survive, because they are taking in energy in a solidified form, that energy deficit, because of the energetic shift that took place.
That's brilliant.
This energetic flaw, this vibrational cataclysm did was it took the state of this reality, vibrational state of this reality, from harmony to disharmony. Right? Now, hey, we're now decoding harmony. Love, peace, beauty. Suddenly there's a shift. Now we're decoding not that, we're decoding this.
For the record, even the eating energy thing is from the book Love Changes Everything. On page 97 it says, with the energy system only at minimum levels, they could no longer live purely on energies in the water and the environment. They had to supplement these by consuming the energies in plant life. This is why we need to eat food now, to make up for the low energy levels in the world around us. Now here is the Alice Bailey connection. She has this to say about the moon. The moon chain has in itself a curious occult history not yet to be disclosed. Certain brief hints may be given for due consideration of students. The moon chain was a chain wherein a systematic failure was to be seen. It is connected with the lower principles. The sexual misery of this planet finds its origins in the moon failure. The progress of evolution on the moon was abruptly disturbed and arrested by the timely interference of the solar logos. This one would correspond exactly to Icke's story of the moon spirit being kicked out and the solar logos saving the day at the last minute. The secret of the suffering in the earth chain, which makes it merit the name the sphere of suffering, has its origin in the events which brought the moon chain to a terrific culmination. This next one from Alice Bailey is pretty important because it's at the heart of what Icke's current theory is. It says, certain results, such as the finding of its polar opposite, were hastened unduly on the moon chain, and the consequence was an uneven development and a retardation of the evolution of a certain number of diva and human groups. Diva is a term that Bailey and Icke use to mean angels, like Lucifer. The origin of the feud between the Lords of the Dark Face and the Brotherhood of Light, which found its scope for activity in the Atlantean days and during the present root race, can be traced back to the moon chain. So you can see that Icke's new moon theory is really just an expansion of Alice Bailey's writings on the moon. The next piece to this puzzle surrounds the idea of Gaia, or the Earth Spirit. David has been, and still is, very passionate about the existence of the Earth Spirit, what Alice Bailey calls the planetary logos.
The spirit of the Earth is the most evolved spirit ever to incarnate in a physical planet. She is a wondrous being of an evolution that we could not even begin to comprehend. And without that wondrous spirit and that high evolution, and the higher you go up in evolution, the more ability you have to love, the more ability you have for tolerance, the more of all these things you have. If she didn't have that, she would have left this planet a long time ago.
When I said publicly in 1991 that the Earth was a living entity that we could communicate with and could communicate with us, people just dubbed me crazy. And now we're seeing scientists who have studied this coming to the same conclusion.
Yes. No one did more to popularize the idea of the Earth Spirit than Alice Bailey. It was her writing that influenced the Gaia religion of the United Nations, which will play an important role in the coming world government. A great example of this is a man named Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller was the author of the World Core Curriculum. He is widely recognized as the father of global education. For 30 years, he was Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. He was the Chancellor of the United Nations University. His ideas about world government, world peace, and spirituality led to the increased representation of religions in the United Nations, especially the New Age movement. He became known as the philosopher of the UN. He's the founder of Robert Mueller Schools, and the preface of the Robert Mueller School World Core Curriculum Manual, November 1986, says, "The underlying philosophy upon which the Robert Mueller School is based will be found in the teachings set forth in the books of Alice A. Bailey by the Tibetan teacher Dejwa Kul." Robert Mueller told an audience in Costa Rica, "We hear now of the Gaia hypothesis, of the interdependence of all inert and living matter, that we are part and parcel of a living planetary organism." Maurice Strong is another Gaia supporter. He was the founder and Secretary General of the United Nations Environment Program and Secretary Advisor to Kofi Annan. He was the founder of the Earth Council and the Earth Charter Initiative and former president of the United Nations University of Peace. He is the author of most of the key United Nations environmental policies and plans, including Agenda 21, the Earth Charter, the Kyoto Protocol, and the United Nations Report on Global Governance. He also founded the Manitou Institute, where various groups perform rituals to heal Gaia. This list can also include people like Al Gore and Ted Turner. So I'm saying that there's a connection between Alice Bailey and the idea of Gaia, or the Earth Spirit, and the New World Order agenda. And to understand it, we should listen to a quote from David Icke about what the Earth Spirit does when people aren't ready to evolve. It says, quote, "This is how the split in Atlantis occurred, and as it did so, the energy system and the roof of light became less powerful. The Earth Spirit decided, with guidance from Rikorsky and the Godhead, that rather than see such a wonderful people continue to fall down the frequencies, she would create the physical changes that would end Atlantis. Those who were still balanced enough to listen to guidance from the light levels would be led to places of safety during the changes. They would later return to restore the roof of light and to take care of the planet still further to even higher frequencies than she had yet reached. You can see that the Earth Spirit did not make this decision out of anger or resentment. Her motivation was love, just as it is today. Had she done nothing, these beings who had worked so hard to evolve up the frequencies would have continued to fall back again. But when she told the Atlanteans her decision through thought communication, most of them didn't like it. This inability to understand the situation confirmed that the time was right to act. Although, according to Icke, this was cut short because of the moon being thrust into the Earth's atmosphere, this would not be the first time that Gaia had tried to commit an evolution-specific genocide, according to Icke. She also did the same thing to Lemuria, what he calls Mu, before it. He wrote, "The energy system was in such a muddle that it threatened the Earth Spirit's ability to harmonize, and she decided to act to bring Mu to an end. If there comes a point when it's necessary to take action to maintain balance for everyone's benefit and check the imbalances that are harming the progress of all in her care, then it is her duty to act. Sometimes this can mean enormous changes that have to take place, but it's always done out of love and necessity, not malice." And according to Icke, the Earth Spirit then proceeded to kill everyone. And he still believes we are in danger because the Earth's consciousness is too low. The only difference now is that the idea of the Illuminati has been incorporated as the ones making it happen.
So, of course, the planet itself is a living, thinking, emotional entity. And we are interacting with that energy field. And one of the things the Illuminati have set out to do and are trying ever more to do in the period we're experiencing now is to bring the vibrational state of the Earth's field, the Earth's consciousness, to as low a point as they can.
It's also important to understand that Icke's belief in Lemuria or Mu and Atlantis are derived entirely from Theosophy, and he still very much believes in these today.
In ancient times, prehistorical times, in terms of official history, where there were, it would appear, two great civilizations which made together a global civilization, one based on a landmass which has become known as Atlantis, and one which has become known as Mu or Lemuria. And these were advanced, very advanced civilizations with, in many ways, knowledge beyond what is available in the public arena today. And they went to great technological lengths, great understandings, for instance, in how you can create a magnetic field which then makes vast stones basically weightless, and you can push them along and maneuver them around. Great technological advancement, at least among the elite.
Now, there's not a shred of evidence outside the Plato account about Atlantis. And the idea of Lemuria, well, the main evidence for that is because Helena Blavatsky, the founder of Theosophy, simply said so. The idea of the sunken continent of Lemuria that Blavatsky describes has been proven an impossibility after the discovery of plate tectonics, which has led modern theosophists to concede that if Lemuria existed, maybe it was simply an era in time instead of an actual continent in light of this new evidence. Hitler and the Nazis also really liked Theosophy. Hitler was said to have kept a copy of the Secret Doctrine by Helena Blavatsky by his bedside. The swastika of the Nazis was used because of its use by Blavatsky as her symbol for Theosophy. The genocide that Hitler imposed was rooted in the theosophical view of the tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed root races from Atlantis. And actually Icke believed this too. He says on page 46 of Love Changes Everything that the inhabitants of Atlantis were an average height of 6'5", blonde-haired, and skin that glowed white. Icke himself remarks about the incredible influence that Theosophy had on Hitler in this way. He says, quote, "I'm not saying that Blavatsky was negative, only that Hitler was influenced by her work." A few other similarities is that Hitler also believed in this idea that the moon came into our orbit and thus gave the need to create this new evolution. He also believed, like Icke, that the earth was hollow, which is funny because in Icke's book The Biggest Secret, when he talks about this, his main evidence for the hollow earth was simply that the Nazis believed it too, which is really only because they both read Helena Blavatsky, who makes the claim in The Secret Doctrine. Also, Hitler believes that the Atlanteans possessed psychic powers and that they were destroyed by a flood, just like Icke believes. It is this desire of Icke's to get back to the Atlantis evolution that is at the core of his teachings today. To demonstrate this, listen to Icke in this recent lecture read a message given to him by a spirit in 1990. We find in another place that Icke identified this spirit as Magnu, who he said was from Atlantis. Listen to Icke explain first that Atlantis was destroyed and how the ultimate objective is to attain the powers we once had in Atlantis.
In 1990 I experienced this, and it stood the test of time in my experience. My own allegiance with your planet goes back to an Atlantean period when there were many energies being used and information and knowledge being used which were, for particular reasons of safety, withdrawn, shall we say, to prevent complete catastrophe, to prevent total destruction of your planet. As the energies around your planet quicken, this is 1990, so these latent energies, these energies which have been withdrawn, will now be phased back in. They will gradually be awakened. As the consciousness level of your planet raises itself, Those of you who are working together to raise your consciousness, you will be able to hold more and more refined vibrations, and the energies themselves contain the knowledge and the information which is beginning to surface again in your consciousness. So many of you will remember the Atlantean times. You will remember that you communicated with, say, dolphins and whales. You understood these sentient creatures. You could levitate. You could manifest things. You could cause spontaneous combustion by not miraculous means at all. Once you know what you're doing, these things follow. It is a matter of order. Now, I'm looking at a time on your planet when these energies, this knowledge is reawakened and reintegrated into your consciousness.
At the very least, we should all be warned that this philosophy has had negative consequences at least once before in history, because it's the same thing that Hitler wanted. The fifth root race of Blavatsky, which Hitler was trying to bring about, was known as the race of hope, and it was said that they would soon rise to the pinnacle of spirituality formerly attained by Atlantis, but that certain people were holding them back. And as we will see in the final section, Icke also holds to this very dark idea. This idea has always been planned to be used in the context of a one-world government. 33rd degree Freemason Manly P. Hall said, "The new Atlantis sets forth an ideal government of the earth. It foretells that day when in the midst of men there shall rise up a vast institution composed of the philosophic elect, an order of illumined men banded together for the purpose of investigating the laws of life and the mysteries of the universe. The age of boundaries is closing, and we are approaching a nobler era when nations shall be no more, when the lines of race and caste shall be wiped out, when the whole earth shall be under one order, one government, one administrative body." Another similarity is the contact with the so-called spiritual hierarchy. As we have seen, Icke is in contact with a plethora of spiritual entities, even up to this very day. The Thule Society, the secret society that Hitler belonged to, also used the Theosophical swastika, by the way, believed that highly intelligent spiritual beings existed and that the truly initiated could keep in contact with those beings for information about the world. The occultist Dietrich Eckhart taught Hitler to get in contact with this spiritual hierarchy, and Hitler in fact believed he was in contact with this superior mythical race taught about by the Thule Society. Eckhart remarked on his deathbed, quote, "Follow Hitler, he will dance, but I am the one to blow the pipe. We have given him the means to put himself in communication with them." The T is capitalized. "Mourn me not, I have influenced history more than any other German." Hitler wanted to enhance his connection to these beings further, and Ernest Pretsky, a book dealer, introduced Hitler to a psychedelic drug containing mescaline and peyote. This produced clairvoyant visions that made Hitler believe he had opened the door to more supernatural powers. Icke, too, was seeking a deeper connection to the spirits that had contacted him, and so he went to Brazil, where he took a potent drug used by shamans to contact the spirit world. Icke calls what contacted him that night the voice, and he says that it was the most defining moment of his career.
Then came the third stage, which started in 2003, when I had an ayahuasca experience in Brazil, and a voice talked to me for 5 hours about the nature of reality. Real clear, very funny, and mind-blowing and life-changing.
I have often wondered if Icke has ever taken any precautions to make sure that the entities that he is in contact with are good entities. He often talks about how the Illuminati are in contact with bad extra-dimensional beings, after all.
And the same gods, demonic entities as they're called in this case, that are worshipped by the Satanists, are the same gods that are worshipped by the secret societies and the religions. Unknowingly, in Satanism, it's knowingly.
These reptilian entities seem to operate, and again, it's not just reptilian. There are many different kinds of entities that do not have a human form, that operate just outside of human sight, and history has recorded them as demons and all this stuff.
So I wonder if he had a system to discern whether the ones that he's talking to are the same ones that are influencing the Illuminati. You can imagine I was a bit discouraged to hear things like this.
Well, I've been on a long journey of nearly 20 years now, consciously doing this, and some force has been pushing me in different directions through intuition, through urges. I just got to do this. I've just got to go there. As I've gone through this and followed it, and who the force is and they are, I don't know. I'm not really that interested, funnily enough, because I just go with it, and I'll remember what it's all about when I leave this genetic spacesuit.
Now, here is the mystery, considering all that we have learned so far.
I think there's a lot of this whole New Age area, you know, of ascended masters and all the Blavatsky stuff and Ashtar Command. I say that that is a belief system controlled by the same force, which is also trawling that bloody energy as we go along.
Again, considering everything we have just learned, this is clearly an admission that he has been lied to by the spirits all of his life. I mean, if they told him that they were Alice Bailey's ascended masters, which they did, and they taught him theosophy word for word, which they did, he must be admitting here that all that he was taught is a lie. But the problem is that he has never stopped teaching and promoting the beings he talked to or what they told him to teach. He clearly attributes everything he is to them.
Among these messages that was given to me in 1990 were, he will say things and wonder where they came from. They will be our words. Sometimes we will put knowledge into his mind. Sometimes he will be led to knowledge. And another one was, a little bit later, arduous seeking is not necessary.
I've given this a lot of thought, and I've come to some possible conclusions. Here are the facts. Icke never has mentioned the name Alice Bailey in his early books, although in them it's clear that he's teaching her doctrine, things like about the seven rays and the coming evolution, the solar logos, the new age, Atlantis, Lemuria, the age of Aquarius, being destroyed because of bad evolution, the earth spirit, the moon problem, her particular brand of reincarnation, even wearing certain colors. He never once, though, attributes any of it to her. He attributes it all to the spirits that he channeled. He says he got all this information from the spirit world, which I'm willing to believe, and therefore I suppose it's possible that he hasn't made the connection that everything he believes is from Alice Bailey himself yet. He may have never noticed that what the spirits told him was word for word Alice Bailey and or theosophy. The other possibility is that because he has alluded to in the past the idea that sometimes during channelings the paradigm of the channeler gets in the way of the message, and so therefore the message can be tainted by the messenger. He refers to this, I think, to try to explain the fact that he has pages and pages of material of his conversations with Jesus, whom he nowadays says never existed. The idea is that, well, the channeler believed in Jesus, so the name was messed up. But, as we will see later, these beings do much, much more than claim to be some entity. They play the role to the very end and really expect you to go tell people what they told you. There are many problems with this, but the biggest one is that, let's say some of the psychics that he talked to were big Alice Bailey fans, and so he got information that was filtered through their paradigm. Now that's still not an excuse, because we're right back to the problem of, well, if he learned later on that Alice Bailey and her ascended masters lead to a new world order ideology, why is he still teaching us the exact same ideology, only packaged in a way that seems to try to hide the obvious source? We will come back to the investigation of Icke's extra-dimensional entities to see if we can determine anything more about them later on. But for now, let's move on to some of Icke's more earthly sources of his information to see if we can determine anything about the evolution from his early material to his current material, like reptilians.